You know, we've had a lot of rains, a lot of flooding, a lot of people have been evacuating their homes. It's a good time to talk about disaster preparedness, and we have a disaster preparedness shelter-in-place event coming up in March, and I want to welcome Grace Stencil and Eric Nunes to the program. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you for having us.
Now, Grace, you're kind of overseeing this whole shelter-in-place event. Tell us about it, and what is shelter-in-place used for? Is it earthquakes, fires, floods, a little bit of everything?
It can be a man-made disaster, or it could be a natural disaster. It's for anything that causes people to have to either shelter in place or evacuate. And that's what we try to cover.
And you guys are going to be talking about what we do. What does that term mean? Shelter in place means I don't hide under the bed, you know, those kinds of things. But basically, you're going to talk about what that entails and kind of do some practice at that.
We're going to do that. We're going to have handouts and suggestions of what people need to shelter in place as far as supplies. But I'm going to let Eric talk about that because
sure.
he's pretty much in charge of it.
Eric, you've been a police officer for many years. You're here now in the village. When you go to someone's home and there's been maybe a disaster or something happened, have you noticed like people who are prepared for these kinds of things versus the people who are just absolutely not prepared for that? What's the difference, and what can people do to help that?
Yeah, there's all kinds of different levels of preparation, obviously. In my past history, I was the emergency services coordinator for the city of La Palma as well as Los Alamitos. And one of the things that we dealt with was something called CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team that would train. We don't have CERT here on our property. What we have is our Good Neighbor Captains, which is essentially a program where we have a person that oversees one building, say, and if a disaster hits, their mission or their job is to go around checking on their neighbors, making sure that there's no medical needs or anything that they need, and that they check out so they can radio in and say that they're fine. Like I said, the level of preparation is different. Some people are prepared to help others, and some people in the shelter-in-place environment realize that as long as their domicile, as long as their manor is safe, to remain in that, because you have down power lines, trees, all kinds of other issues out there that might become disastrous for them by walking outside, right? So we just ask that they stay inside, where they have shelter, they have food, water, and all those kinds of things until help can arrive to the whole community.
Now, for me, I almost shop almost day to day. So that's probably not a good idea for someone who, if an earthquake, hey, you need 3 days of water, you need these kind of supplies at the house. So what kind of prep are you talking to people about in terms of what they should have around the house for, let's say, an earthquake where services might not be able to get to somebody for a few days?
We're going to be explaining to people what supplies they need to shelter in place. Also, when they're at home and let's say they feel the earthquake, what are they going to do? Don't go in the kitchen. All your cabinet supplies are going to fall out. Your refrigerator is going to roll across. Go under a table. Don't go near a window. Things like that. And we're going to try to go over that with them at this expo that we're having.
I think in Grace's checklist that she's created for her group and for this training specifically, it really provides that kind of list that you're talking about, where they have this much water, and then certain dry foods, things that if you don't have electricity and your refrigerator stops working, these are the things that aren't perishable, and blankets and other things that that you might need to keep you warm, those kinds of things, as well as first aid kit and batteries and those things. So there's a whole list that she has provided for this training.
Even something like, we say, a man-made disaster, like a transformer blows somewhere and you're out of electricity. It's not like this a major emergency, but you don't have any lights in your house, your refrigerator's out. It's a little bit of a man-made disaster in your house.
Especially in our community, where the people are seniors and they get a little hysterical sometimes. So yes, having no electricity would be a big issue, and it could happen. Just like you said, a transformer goes out, and it could be located in a small area, but those people in that area are definitely affected and need help and need to know what to do. Prepared. Be prepared is really our
And Eric, in your history, and you've been on the scenes of disaster, I'm sure, and maybe even earthquakes and things like that. How important is it for people to, like they would say, strap down your water heater and make sure like large bookcases are attached to the wall and those kinds of things, that they can fall over, they can really do some damage in a house, and you don't really think about that until everything starts shaking.
Sure, and that's typically what kind of causes the in-house accidents, right? Or the injuries that occur is because of large objects that are not affixed to the walls. Obviously, things like water heaters, there's laws now that require that if you're going to have a water heater installed, that has to be strapped, to the wall with an earthquake strap. But there are other things in your house that we really don't think about: pictures, large picture frames, all kinds of stuff on cabinets, and even the cabinet itself. In the old days, we had these big, entertainment centers that people had with it, and those things would come toppling down on folks. But it's stuff like that we try to tell people to make sure that if they're going to have something large like that, to fix to the walls so that they don't move around easily, and provide them time to get away from those things and stay away from that during that event.
Here in Laguna Woods Village, what do you think that maybe the biggest concern is? Is it fire? Is it earthquake? Is it flooding?
I think it's earthquake.
It's earthquakes, right?
Because we do feel earthquakes a lot.
Right, and there's that constant reminder. I don't have any water in the house, and I just
Exactly, that's right. It's earthquakes. But because of our history, fires. Remember the big fires that we had? That could be an issue here too. Flooding, maybe not so much in those terms, but I think fire and earthquake are probably our biggest issues here and our biggest concerns. Do you agree, Eric?
Yeah, I think the Laguna fires that we had are an example, and even about 2 years ago we had a fire out here
out in the Irvine Orchard Hills area. They were evacuating folks. Now that's one of those. You're not sheltering in place. You're getting out.
Yeah, you're getting out, right? And but I think you made I think your example of the electricity going out. That's something that I won't say regularly occurs, but it has occurred on a number of times. And it does inconvenience people, for one, but a lot of folks that may have something that they need medically that requires that, they have to make those preparations in advance for that, making sure they have batteries for so it's able to operate off a battery system. And if they contact SCE, SCE will help them to make arrangements for stuff that they might need in preparation for a real power outage or an extended power outage.
And I know for some folks that are seniors in our community, the last pill's in the bottle, and that's when they get their refill done, or maybe if they're using oxygen, they just have the one tank, they don't have a backup. And if we're talking about sheltering in place for 3-4 days, diabetes medications, any other kind of oxygen tanks, or and if services aren't able to get to and from, that can be literally a life or death situation, right?
Exactly, and one of the handouts that we're going to be sending has all the list of the things they need to shelter in place for 3 days, and then also a list of what you need if you have to evacuate the area.
Okay.
So they'll get that information after the seminar.
Your go box and your go bag and those kinds of things.
Yes, exactly, all those things, all those things.
So I want to put the flyer up on the screen. It's going to be Friday, March 15th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Do people need to register for this in any way or anything like that?
Yes, and I'm going to let Eric discuss that.
Yeah, what we're trying to do is we're working with our IT folks to get us a registration link off our disaster preparedness task force website on the Laguna Woods Village website, and then it'll be there. And it's really, we're asking them to register just so we know really a head count. It's not required that they do. We prefer that we do, so we have an advance notice of about how many people.
We don't want the event to be a disaster.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't want to turn people away, right? But we think that we have enough capacity in Clubhouse 3 with 800 or so folks being able to attend. It's open to not just the residents around Clubhouse 3, but for everybody that would like to come in and sit there. And we're not only doing a shelter-in-place presentation, but a presentation that Annie Wright is actually doing on mobile technology with these cell phones. And what she's doing is showing, in preparation for disaster, how you can put all your emergency contacts inside there.
Right.
So if you were in a disaster, or if you were just found lying down and they had your phone, well, they're essentially just a brick if you don't, or if you're not able to open it up. But it shows how somebody that could get that phone could at least have contacts to your emergency contacts.
Right.
Push a button, call them, and say, "Hey, we have a person here, that needs help. Do you know them?" That kind of thing. So and it also alerts systems like Alert OC and then obviously our Code Red system here locally.
Terrific. All right. Disaster preparedness, shelter in place coming up March 15th over at Clubhouse 3. Grace Stencil and Eric Nunez, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you very much, Mike.
When we come back, we got OC Animal Care. Stay with us.